given the festive period is peak for so many businesses across the UK, this is a tough blow to an already challenging year for the hospitality and tourism industry in particular. We now want to renew our faith in the industry, or more specifically, the industry's future, which has been hurt the most with the loss of 1/5 of all jobs in this sector. The third largest employer in the UK, according to the BBC's latest report last November. And considering this, we must sustain and recreate jobs for the UK's youth across so many regions, needing hope and prosperity for a new way forward. It's critical to deliver with the right political will and support from leaders such as our first guest, Ciara Crossan. We're speaking today with one of the UK's most preeminent wedding events promoters, Ciara Crossan, founder and leader at Wedding Dates. Ciara has agreed to be Renew's first hospitality and tourism guest on our new podcast series, Let's Renew Hospitality and Tourism. Ciara and her team at Wedding Dates have been in operation now over 12 years and have served hundreds of venues in their search for wedding couples and their perfect location to say, I do. They have earned many awards and accolades over the years and most recently announced they have driven close to £100 million in revenues for these venues with over 27,000 weddings booked to date. Good day, Ciara, and welcome to Let's Renew. And firstly, can we introduce you to Renew's party's youth spokesperson, Alex Gunter, who has been instrumental in creating Renew's mix of media for the positioning of the youth voice for the UK's younger political views on renewing politics for generations to come. It is promising that we can see a positive light ahead thanks to the vaccines arriving in the UK, and yet so many industries in hospitality, tourism and the retail sector will continue to suffer for some time unless we can drive new business and create jobs for the youth of today, and especially in an industry ranked close to third in overall GDP in the UK. We know that you and your team at Wedding Dates are as busy as ever, and so we wanted to ask you some questions that may assist in sustaining, maintaining and finding these new jobs for our youth in this hardest hit industry. Can you tell us how your company has dealt with the pandemic? What has been the effect on Wedding Dates and how have you adapted?
Well, thanks for having me, Stephen and Alex. It has certainly been a year like no other. And it has had a massive effect on my business. So my company, Wedding Dates, we are a software company supporting the hospitality industry. So we're one of the indirect, employers in the hospitality sector. So in terms of dealing with the pandemic, well, obviously in March, we had to transition very quickly, overnight, effectively, to working from home. Now, one of the benefits, I suppose, for us is that, as we are an online business, we were able to adapt to that quite quickly. We had already used tools like Zoom, which my one regret of 2020 is that I didn't have shares in Zoom at the beginning of all of this. But we had already used tools like Zoom before, and we use a project management tool called Teamwork. And so we were able to transition quite quickly in terms of the technology to working from home. But one of the big things for us was, the lack of contact. And I personally would be a very sociable person. So I found suddenly, sitting in my spare bedroom at home, working remotely, I found that quite a challenge. Probably even more so than some of my team. But we started doing, we instigated some regular team meetings. So every day at 9:30 we have a daily stand-up call, and it's literally a 15-20 minute call. It's not long at all, but it just gives everyone the opportunity to get on, say good morning. We just share what we worked on yesterday and what is our focus for today, so that we're all abreast of what everybody is doing, but also we can jump in and support where required. And then within the departments, we had a weekly wash-up meeting for each department, and then every Thursday we kind of have a mini town hall where I give a business update, and kind of a longer one then every month. So that has really kept us on track and kept us connected and communicating with each other while we work from home, because I think that's one of the biggest things. I think a lot of companies would have, thought about, oh God, everybody working from home. You kind of would have had this impression that everybody's just sitting around watching Netflix. And in fact, the opposite is true. I feel like productivity has increased since we all started working from home. But where the issue arises is the lack of social interaction and the isolation that people feel. So I'm really mindful to try to keep the contact with, regular Zoom meetings. We're on kind of instant messenger with each other throughout the day, and that helps keep that contact.
Yes, gosh, it's been a very difficult year, hasn't it, with the social interactions, but it's great to see you're thriving. Anyway, welcome to the official Let's Renew Our Hospitality Tourism series of podcasts. Congratulations on your amazing achievements over the years, and we are honoured to speak to you as our very first guest today.
Thank you so much, Alex.
No problem. So, could you tell us how important youth participation is in your business and in the industry as a large?
So youth participation is hugely important, I think, across many sectors. Certainly for hospitality, lots of young people, myself included, would work in bars, restaurants, in hotels, through their maybe college years. And I think what you learn when you work in hospitality, it's quite unique that you don't get in other sectors. It gives you a level of empathy and understanding, when you're dealing with the general public, when you're learning the art of service. You don't necessarily get that in a lot of other industries. So I think that's one of the huge plus points of the hospitality sector for young people that are, coming out into the world and looking to build their careers. If you can ground yourself in a foundation of empathy, of understanding, of listening, those skills will take you so far in life. And the hospitality industry is such a great training ground for those skills, because you have to have them or you won't survive, right? So I just think it's such a great grounding industry for anybody, no matter where they go later in life. It is a brilliant training ground. And then I think for the industry itself, youth participation, youth, it goes without saying, younger people, they bring fresh ideas. And I think as well, oftentimes when we think of hospitality, we think of the operational side of it. We think food service, kitchen staff, that kind of thing. But when you think of a hotel or a restaurant or bar, it has many different tentacles. Okay, so there's sales and marketing, social media, HR. There's lots of different facets, to hospitality business, like any other business, but we do kind of tend to automatically think of the operational side. So I think there's definitely huge opportunities, both front of house, as I said, when, dealing with the general public and listening and understanding, etc. But then back of house, in HR side of things, in particularly sales, marketing, digital, social media, there's huge opportunities for young people to really gain great experience, but also they can really benefit the industry with fresh ideas. The social media is such a prime, it's an easy example for me to go to, because everything changes so quickly. And of course, younger people are going to be more adept with, I'm making a sweeping generalization here, but I'm sure you'll forgive me. It tends to be that the youth would adopt these things, Snapchat, TikTok, all the different tools, maybe more quickly than other people, and they can then bring that and look at how they can implement that into the business. So I think there's a definite plus on both sides.
Yes, absolutely. This year's been so difficult, though, for so many people. I personally have quite a few friends who work in the hospitality and lost their jobs or weren't able to work for such a long time because so many establishments have not been able to adapt. What might this government do to assist those most in trouble in the short term? But more importantly, what might they be able to do to help renew the industry as a whole over the long term?
Well, I think there's so much that has been done and needs to continue to be done. Certainly, the temporary VAT rate reduction to 5% is certainly very, very welcome to the industry, and I think everybody in the industry would welcome that being extended longer term. You know, I think the government has looked at different things like, you know, rates waivers. You know, we've in Ireland, we've had a rebate on our rates that we paid last year into our businesses, which is a help. And obviously the furlough scheme, the flexible furlough scheme. I think it's interesting for me because obviously I work in the UK hospitality sector. My clients, you know, 2/3 of my clients are in the UK. So I have deep understanding and vast experience, but I myself am based in Ireland, so I'm looking at what the UK and UK government and Boris is doing, but I'm also obviously living through what the Irish government is doing, and one of the things that was quite different for us, I mean, when the furlough scheme was announced in the UK initially, nothing had been announced in Ireland, and we were, you know, hearing over here, oh my God, the government are going to pay 80% of people's wages. Like, this is incredible, and this is incredible. And then a couple of days later, the Irish government obviously followed suit. But the difference was with the furlough scheme in the UK, when people were on furlough, obviously they weren't allowed to work. And so while it was absolutely hugely welcomed by the industry, and all of my clients availed of the furlough scheme in some form or other, but a lot of people were put on furlough and you know, obviously stuck at home, and they weren't able to work, they weren't allowed to work, they weren't able to contribute, and that was very difficult, not only for the companies who needed those bodies but necessarily weren't able to pay for them, but also for the employees themselves, you know, feeling disconnected, feeling disengaged. You know, a lot of the people that we would deal with would be, you know, wedding coordinators, banqueting managers, sales and marketing people. You know, they would be dealing with couples day in, day out. And so they were furloughed, stuck at home, not allowed work, no emails. And they were absolutely stressed out of their mind, thinking, oh my God, what are all these couples going to do? I have to move their weddings, but I'm not there. I can't do it. You know, they were worried about what their jobs were going to look like when they went back, if they weren't able to operate during that furlough time. And the difference, again, when you're outside it, you can kind of compare and contrast. And the difference with the Irish scheme, it wasn't called a furlough scheme, it was a temporary wage subsidy scheme we had here, and the government were paying 70% of staff wages. You had the option as an employer to top them up to 100%, but you didn't have to. But the big difference was that the employees were still allowed to work. So it meant for businesses like mine, I was able to get that wage, support for paying people's wages, but I was still able to avail of them helping me continue to run my business throughout these really difficult months. And for the employees themselves, they were able to stay motivated, stay engaged, etc.
Gosh, yeah, I didn't think of it like that. It's certainly really interesting to see how different countries have addressed that in different ways. I suppose you had to make a lot of changes and a lot of adaptations to how you operate as a whole, especially now we're entering this sort of new health and safety driven environment. So what have you seen as the most effective planning in this new health and safety driven environment for the hospitality industry, and in particular with large gatherings like weddings and party celebrations, the sort of stuff that you're quite heavily involved with?
So, I mean, one of the things that I think is quite very, very, very challenging for hotels and hospitality businesses is in a lot of cases, you know, they're small independent operators, and they're kind of, you know, the guidelines are coming down, it's filtering through, but, you know, there can be a lot of confusion, and people are kind of, you know, doing it on their own. And that's why I really firmly believe that there does need to be a Minister for Hospitality, in government, lobbying on behalf of the sector. The whole seat at the table campaign has really gained a lot of steam over the last few weeks and months. I think the petition is now somewhere up around 170,000 signatures, which is wonderful. And I know Parliament is going to debate the issue on the 11th of January. So if there is anybody listening to this podcast that hasn't signed the petition yet, I really urge them to do so. You can easily find it if you Google Petition for Minister for Hospitality, because, you know, as we know, currently the responsibility for the hospitality sector is shared by ministers in departments across business, energy, digital, culture, media. I mean, we're just getting lost in the mix, right? So we definitely I firmly believe that having a minister would shine a light on hospitality, and then that will impact the regulations as they filter down and help the businesses implement these health and safety policies and procedures that they need to undertake. I think some of the positives, if we can try to glean some positives from COVID, is, there were certain things that were coming down the track anyway that have probably been accelerated because of COVID. So, we already know, out in Japan, robotics technology is really rapidly growing in pace, and they have robots that bring you your room service to your room in hotels in Japan. And I think we're going to see more of that kind of contactless transactions happening over here. What's the other kind of contactless check-in, or pre-check-in, where you check in online in advance of going to the hotel, and then you get like a QR code on your phone and you can scan that just to go straight into your bedroom. I mean, there's pros and cons obviously with any kind of technology. Some would argue that's what the guest wants. They just want to keep it simple, keep it streamlined, get in, get out. And then others would argue that takes away the whole hospitality out of the industry when you're not actually interacting with the guests. I do think there's a difference in how corporate hotels and leisure hotels will kind of adapt to that technology. And in terms of the hotels, and hotels is my kind of core, so excuse me if I use the word hotel when I really probably should broaden it out to the whole hospitality sector. But the health and safety regulations and hygiene regulations are already quite stringent in the industry anyway. I do obviously think it's gotten a lot more strict with COVID, and the levels of cleaning that's going on in bedrooms now, the sanitisation, the machines that go in and sanitise the rooms and emit the aerosols, etc. There's a lot of different technology out there, but it comes down to the social distancing, washing our hands. The basics are still very, very important, as we know. I think when it comes to weddings and large gatherings, it's obviously very difficult. We haven't really seen them happen in large numbers really since the pandemic. I mean, the weddings in the UK are still capped at 15. In Ireland, we're at 25. So it remains to be seen how that will play out. I think the rollout of the vaccine and as rapid as that has come to us, the vaccine itself, and if the rollout can be as rapid, then hopefully, by this time next year we'll be back to some sort of normality where we will be able to gather in large numbers again. But I do think, as I say, the basics, social distancing, hand washing, masks, it always seems to come back down to that when you listen to the epidemiologists. But places have got creative as well. I was in a restaurant, my first meal out since March, last weekend with some girlfriends, and they had a little thing on the table, a little laminated card with a QR code on it, and you, instead of menus, you just opened up your phone and scanned it, and then the menu popped up on your phone, and that's how you instead of touching menus. So places have got creative, but I do feel for them because in a lot of cases they're just figuring it out themselves as they go along, and that's why I really do believe the need for the Minister for Hospitality.
Absolutely. I've had some trouble with those QR codes myself. Even though I'm the young person, my phone doesn't seem to like them very much. But absolutely, I mean, the call for a minister is something I can certainly see why so many people in the industry, they're just calling for a future at the end of the day. The industry has been hit so hard. And I want to take us back to the youth aspect for a minute, because so many young people head into hospitality as a way to enhance their skills and sometimes to even make a career in the industry. Obviously now a lot of them probably are quite unsure, or they're not really sure which route to go. Can you suggest ways for the youth to get involved in the UK hospitality industry and tourism? In particular, sort of looking at that training and education, and how might you encourage others to really come through and renew faith in the industry for 2021 and really beyond?
So, I mean, I'm such an advocate for the hospitality industry. I love it. And I think it's a lot of people say this, if you go into hospitality and you get hooked by the bug, then there's no getting away from it. You're kind of hooked for life. It is one of those sectors that kind of really gets into you, and I do think, we're going through a terrible crisis globally now, and as we know, the hospitality sector has been one of the worst impacted, and some people would say, it's been unfairly targeted by the governments in terms of the restrictions. But we also know, after the 1918 pandemic was the Roaring Twenties, right? And I genuinely feel there is so much pent up demand for people to get out, celebrate together, whether that's a wedding, an anniversary, birthday parties, all those things that we kind of missed or had to put on hold in 2020. All of that pent up demand is there. And even aside from that, even just people wanting to meet up with their friends to have a drink, to go out for a meal, just to socialise, to get out to see some live music, some theatre, we are all craving that. So I really believe the future is so bright for hospitality. The next few years ahead of us are going to be absolutely bumper years for hospitality. Of that, I have no doubt. And I think, again, we can only look back and take our inspiration from, that Roaring Twenties era where everyone is just out, wants to just be merry and celebrate and come together. So I think we do have a few bumper years ahead of us, which is very exciting for anybody looking to get into the industry. And then when things, settle down again, the hospitality industry is such a wonderful industry if you want to travel, because the opportunities are limitless. You can travel anywhere in the world and work in hospitality and do really well in your career, but also get amazing world experience and travel experience. So I do think that's a really attractive factor, particularly for younger people, and having an education, a degree or a qualification in hospitality, it's literally your passport to the world. And I think that's something that really needs to be highlighted, when we are trying to attract youth into the industry. I think that's one of the calling cards, or it should be one of the one of the sound bites of any promotional campaign, is this passport to a wider the whole world. You can go anywhere. So I do think that should make it attractive to young people. And I would say we're in the crisis now, but this too shall pass, and we're already seeing the light at the end of the tunnel with the rollout of the vaccine so imminent. I'm very, very hopeful for kind of midway through 2021 and certainly 22, 23, 24. They're going to be years like we haven't seen, because I just think there is genuinely so much pent up demand there. So it's an exciting time ahead for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad that there is a really strong future for the industry, and I'm certainly looking forward to the Roaring Twenties as well. But that's more of a customer than anything else. So looking really far into the future now, of course, COVID isn't the only crisis we're ever going to look at. It's not the only crisis we're ever going to face, because climate change is a thing. Climate change is happening, and it's going to be an even bigger issue. Especially with the new COP talks that are going to happen in Glasgow between world leaders. So what opportunities does ecotourism offer the industry in the future? And what advice would you offer to ordinary people planning their events in the coming years, in the Roaring Twenties, to keep them green?
Well, I definitely think there's huge opportunities for ecotourism, and certainly there's, certain countries that have adopted that really, really well. I know a lady in India who runs an ecotourism, a travel company called Untitled, that offers eco-tours around rural areas of India. There's definitely opportunities for businesses, because it is going to be more and more and more popular as we go into the next few years, as you said, Alex. So I think every hospitality business has a responsibility to think about how they are impacting the environment, the local community. And again, some places are ahead of the game with this. They're doing it already. But in terms of ecotourism, I think it needs to be more, an individual property, an individual hospitality business can't necessarily offer an ecotourism opportunity or offering on their own. They need to come together. There needs to be collaboration. So you could envisage, for example, certain areas coming together, and branding themselves as a destination. So they already obviously do that. Scotland, the Cotswolds, the Lake District. We know those areas that have come together and work collaboratively. But I think the challenge for those destinations is to, put together an ecotourism package and have a focus collectively on more green initiatives and being more sustainable. In terms of individuals planning events, again, I think we all collectively have a responsibility to look at what our footprint is. COVID has been an absolute nightmare from an eco perspective. The amount of disposable gloves, disposable masks, things. I went to a coffee shop a couple of weeks ago, and every single takeaway coffee lid was covered in cling film. I mean, it horrified me, the amount of single-use plastic that was going on there. So, we were going in the right direction, and then COVID hit, and the green agenda had to take a step to one side in favour of the health agenda. But I do feel that after COVID, we're back in 2021 when we're coming through it, we certainly need to get the green agenda back on the table, and the single-use plastics. They just have to go. And for us as individuals, in our daily lives, or indeed if we're planning events, I think we need to be thinking about the materials that we're using, in terms of the decor in the room, in terms of the food sustainability, in terms of even the invitations that go out, etc., etc. I suppose it's thinking of all the elements of the wedding or of the event, and thinking, is there a way I can make this greener? How can I build sustainability into my event, into my wedding? And we're quite well educated on the things we need to do. Get rid of single-use plastics, source things locally, etc., etc. So I don't think it's that hard. We just need to remember to do it. I definitely think we all collectively have a responsibility to do that, because it is very important, and it's our own, it's for our future and our children's future. So it is something that hopefully will become, I have no doubt it will become more prevalent in people's minds once we're kind of over this health crisis.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been worried about the amount of single-use plastic you've been seeing all around the place. I sometimes wonder what's wrong with a good old coffee mug. You can wash them, but I understand the concerns as well. It is really worrying. So I'm really glad that you've got such an optimistic outlook on climate within the industry. So the majority of events this year have unfortunately been sort of closed down. They've had to change. And it's a shame, because so many of those events would have been celebratory. They would have been so enjoyable. And I really hope that companies like Wedding Dates, like yours, will get a really big lease of life after this. And hopefully we can build a much better future after these vaccines have finally done their job. So what can you say to the youth today to really help them, to encourage them to jump on board with the sector? And why they should believe in the industry's future, and how they can play a role in renewing it themselves.
Well, I think it's like what I said earlier. I just think that the opportunities within hospitality are so great. The skills that you learn when you work in hospitality, particularly if you work on the floor, listening skills, empathy, understanding, patience, they are just exceptional skills to have in life. So I feel like everybody maybe should do a stint in hospitality. It might knock the edges off a few people. And if you work in hospitality and you're serving people, you can always identify the ones that have worked in hospitality themselves, because they'll just be a little bit nicer, etc. So I do think that is something we should probably all have to do. But I think the youth has a huge opportunity in, you know, playing a role in renewing the future of hospitality, because we know, again, even pre-COVID, you know, what travelers and what people who are, you know, consumers are looking for is they're looking for an experience. They don't just want to go to a hotel or go to a restaurant. They want to have an experience. You know, they're looking at not just the food that's served to them, but the ambiance, the decor, the feel of the place, how Instagrammable it is. So, you know, we know that consumers want that. And I definitely think, you know, the youth has a huge opportunity in helping shape those experiences, whether that's in a bar, a restaurant, a hotel, you know. And again, it's not, we need to think about the industry as not just waiters, you know, waitresses, you know, people on the floor. We need to think about who are the interior designers doing these spaces, who are the marketing people coming up with these amazing campaigns to attract people through social media, you know, who are the you know, the talented chefs coming up with these creative new concepts and new dishes. So it expands much beyond, you know, the operational side of it. And I think that's where there's a huge amount of creativity in this industry. And that, I think, is very attractive to younger people. So I would definitely encourage younger people to consider, you know, a role in hospitality. Maybe it's a jumping off point. Maybe you just want to get that grounding and get those life skills, or maybe you want to develop your career. But I think the opportunities to build a career in hospitality are so great, because places have, you know, fantastic training programs. You can climb the ranks to supervisor, to manager. You know, if you have initiative, if you have drive, if you have good empathy skills, and if you there's a lot of opportunities for leading, you know, leading a team in the hospitality sector as well. So I believe so much in it that, you know, when you get into the industry, really the world is your oyster. And I think the people that are attracted to the hospitality industry, I always say the clue is in the name, right? We're generally a hospitable bunch. So, you know, if you do come into the industry, and that's something that has kept me in the industry for so long. And you know, I run a technology company, but we work in the hospitality sector. And what keeps me in it is the people. You know, I just absolutely love working in the sector, because my clients become my friends, and you get to know people on a personal level. You can really build relationships. There's, you know, there's always good crack, there's good banter. You know, it's just one of those industries. And every day is different. So I would definitely encourage young people to go for a job in hospitality and see how they can shape the future.
Thank you. Yeah, it's quite incredible how many different parts go to building the industry as a whole. I mean, it really isn't just bar staff and chefs, is it? It's such a huge network that so many people have so many opportunities, and I really hope that more young people do dive right back into the industry, and especially so many of them already in it in the first place and had to take a step back. Mm-hmm. So finally from me, thank you so much. We hope that you'll rejoin us again here at the Let's Renew podcast, when we can all witness a return to normal jobs, relaxation of these restrictions, especially for those heroes that have contributed so much to the way of the UK's life, in way of GDP and job retention, but also in culture. And in pure enjoyment. So here at Renew, I just want to say thank you for your contribution to the industry at large, and wish you and your team at Wedding Dates continued success for the future. Thank you from here at Renew, and especially thank you to everybody listening. And I really hope that everyone gets right on board with the new Roaring Twenties, and lots of our young bright people coming out of education now, coming into the world of work, think about hospitality. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex. Really enjoyed chatting to you.
I just want to put in one last word here, Ciara. I listening to you and your wonderful explanations from Wedding Dates perspective, you've given me two headlines here, which I think surmises this fantastic podcast. And one is, we'll probably use it, renew the Roaring Twenties with hospitality and tourism. And then the second one is we want to, recognize you as a hospitality hero, because we recognize so many people on the front line of all acts during this time, but it's people like yourself and Wedding Dates, in particular, your team, the people behind you, that have helped to keep, a sense of great renewal in this industry. So, yeah, we want to thank you sincerely and hope you will join Renew Party's events in person in the future.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Absolutely. I'm not turning down any invitations for in-person events. I really look forward to seeing you in person sooner rather than later, I hope.
Yes, absolutely. Slán Bhaile agus Seanna Nulla, Ciara.
Oh, thank you so much. Happy Christmas.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.